Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Beginning in the U.S., the Nigerian government has called on the United States to review its recent decision to limit the validity of non-immigrant visas issued to Nigerian citizens to just 3 months and for single entry, describing the move as a departure from principles of fairness and reciprocity. In a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the government expressed concern over the revised visa reciprocity schedule, which affects categories such as B1, B2, which is the business and tourism visa, F, which is for students, and J, which is for exchange visitors. The new U.S. policy took effect on the 8th of July, 2025. The federal government noted that the new restriction imposes a disproportionate burden on Nigerian travelers, particularly students, professionals engaged in legitimate business, families visiting loved ones, and individuals involved in cultural and educational exchanges. According to the statement, the decision appears misaligned with the principles of reciprocity, equity, and mutual respect that have historically guided bilateral relations between Nigeria and the United States.
Well, in the meantime, Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Yusuf Tuggar, has vowed that Nigeria will not bow to pressure from the Trump administration to accept the Venezuelan deportees or third country prisoners from the United States, quoting 1990s American rappers, Public Enemy, to make his point. In the words of the famous US rap group Public Enemy, you remember a line from Flavor Flav, a member of the group, who said, "Flavor Flav has problems of his own. I can't do nothing for you, man," he said in a TV interview this week. We already have over 230 million people, the minister said. His comments follow threats from Washington to restrict visas and hike tariff on countries who do not comply with his deportation policy. Interesting times we're in.
It is.
Flavor Flav, Public Enemy #1.
You know, I have to just, first of all, just say that, you know, this must have been a very difficult response. I saw that interview with Sean Okimbaloye on Channels. I hope I said his name right. Okimbaloye, yes, on Channels. And I must say that this must have been, you know, what needs to be said had to be said, you know, and in the time where everyone is speculating what could the reason be, he made it very clear that we still give this 5-year opportunity to U.S. citizens as well. The only change made is to the e-visas at this time. So what exactly is the issue? They also specified, it's the issue around overstaying visas, jumping to about 7% now, with over 6,000 people overstaying their visas. Well, that is an issue. Information sharing also came forward, but he was very sacrosanct in saying this has to do with the Venezuelan deportees and Nigeria's refusal to accept or refuse. He even mentioned that this has nothing to do with BRICS, even though he did point out that, you know, President Trump had mentioned 10% tariffs for the countries who attended BRICS. Let's not forget also that meeting that happened that Nigeria's president was excluded from. But it still boils down to accepting.
West African countries?
Yes. You know? But I mean, what can we say? You know, really, Nigeria has over 200 million people. Can we can we bring in these people and effectively cater to them? We're constantly talking about the standard of living of Nigerians living in Nigeria at this time. Are we ready to take in foreign nationals and subject them to this same level of standard of living? At this point in time, it's not realistic. So what needed to be said. It's just unfortunate that we're now playing proxy games to win this war, and I don't see it coming to an end anytime soon.
Well, I mean, I think this is a very important issue, Kachi.
Yes.
Extremely important. If a diplomatic row is brewing between Nigeria and an important, you know, country like the United States, I think that we will have to approach it with care, you know, and no seriousness. I am not sure why Minister of Foreign Affairs Tuggar chose a television interview to expose what he thinks is the root cause of the problem with the United States of America. Okay. If you recall, you see that there's been a lot of ding-dong, you know, since America announced that, like Ethiopia, like Ghana, and like Cameroon, Nigeria too will no longer enjoy, you know, the 5-year multiple entry visa arrangement. The first excuse seemed to be like it had to do with reciprocity, which people thought that Nigeria reneged on, and it turned out that we didn't, because Mr. Bayo Onanuga clarified that. And then after Nigeria's clarification, then came America's reclarification to say that, okay, this is not about BRICS, this is not about reciprocity, this is about our internal arrangement linked to security. Of course, after which Nigeria, also fired back. If there was going to be a response, I would have thought that that response would take the sort of, route that the one previously done by the spokesperson of the president. But then to go on TV to say that, oh, this is all about the pressure being mounted on Nigeria to take Venezuelan and a few other deportees that America is trying to get out of their country. I'm not so sure how diplomatic, how, appropriate that is. Are we saying that there were correspondences that the Minister of Foreign Affairs can prove to the world that this is the reason why America is doing that? Because when it comes to the brass tacks and it gets to a level where the presidency, and namely the president of Nigeria, will be speaking directly with the president of America, can the foreign affairs minister supply evidence that there's a pressure from America? And I'm not saying that there can be. We know how Trump behaves. We know how sometimes he tries to lord it over people and he tries to bully particularly other presidents. But then is this documented? Or is this just a diplomatic hint that, oh, we won't do this to you if you take the Venezuelan deportees? But having said that, I'm just trying to clarify how appropriate that was in terms of diplomatic channel. But then if that is the case, whether outrightly or, in a subterfuge manner, I think that it's something that Nigeria should take seriously.
Yes.
And deal with it, with all the respect that we have as a sovereign nation. Don't forget that this is not the first time that sort of a thing will be happening to an African country. If you recall, all the three prime ministers in succession of the United Kingdom, including this one, tried to go ahead with the idea of supplying Rwanda, an African country, with the cleanest capital city in Africa, with asylum seekers that are rejected in the United Kingdom. I'm not sure what our sister Kemi Bidnock had to say about that, but it passed through Parliament. It's only legal orders that they're now dealing with. That's why you do not have yet British, asylum seekers in the UK being deported, shall we say, or being sent to Rwanda, because there's a deal between the UK and Rwanda involving loads of money. What will therefore be the deal between United States of America and Nigeria and a few other ones? How much money will you have to give us to destabilize our country by sending Venezuelans or other people that you no longer want? And this is the important thing that Nigerian government will either have to, you just have to stand up on your feet as a sovereign nation and say that if our punishment will be that, okay, Nigerians will no longer have access to easier visa regimes and policies, or that we won't even be able to go to America at all. Stand on your feet and declare that you will not accept that, only if it is true and with evidence that this is the reason why America is doing that. But of course, we also know that Trump is the master of the deal, as they say. But we also have a president who, by every stretch of the imagination, is also a master of the deal. Maybe it will lead to a time that both President Trump and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will have to sit down together or make a phone call that is necessary and say, hey, man, what is going on there? What is going on there? What do we need to do? But then take it or leave it. We will not accept criminals. We will not accept people that you have rejected in our country. But we can work things out. We are not Mauritania, for crying out loud. We're not Senegal. We're not anybody. And we're not even South Africa. We're Nigeria.
We are Nigeria.
And so,
I like that.
Absolutely, we are Nigerians. And we don't get kicked around by anybody. But of course, we're also diplomatic. And we should approach this in a diplomatic manner. So for me, Tuggar should be careful. He should consult more with the presidency. And then let's see a robust, mature, and of course, Nigerian interest way of dealing with this thing so that it doesn't come around next time and then they say just because we did 5 years visa, we're accepting everything that America is throwing our way. No, we shouldn't. But we should also discuss like equal partners, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more with you. With everything you just said. One thing I pick majorly is don't go through the corners. If you want to talk to me directly.
Talk to me.
Exactly.
Talk to me.
But I also have to say, with regards to the minister, I notice he has a pattern of outrightly just saying things exactly as they are. Now, I'm used to, and I don't know if I speak for a lot of Nigerians, oftentimes when we see situations like this, we often don't really get a very clear and direct reason as to what exactly is going on. There's still a lot of specification. Even if you look at the statement as well, directly from the U.S. missions on this issue, there was no mention of the deportees whatsoever. It was primarily just, reciprocity. But how do you juxtapose that response with the minister now saying that, but there is reciprocity? So I think with that interview, I also don't think the minister did that interview here. It looked like he was done from, he was outside the country. So you can imagine that was probably something that was just put together to say we need to address these issues. And the minister is giving Nigerians a heads up. I think that's what that interview was, to say, listen, it's about to get tougher. These are the current issues that are on board. How far these issues with regards to the deportees, or if it's the e-visa, or if it's the overstaying, how far conversations on these issues have come, or even Nigeria not being present in that meeting where President Trump actively said, oh, wow, he told the Liberian president, your English is superb, you speak better than a lot of my people. How far we've gone in dealing with these issues, we might not be privy to that information, but I do appreciate the fact that at least we have an idea of what exactly is going on. There is current tension, and that information was essential. And that's one thing that the minister has constantly done.
Absolutely.
Being the Minister of Foreign Affairs cannot be easy. I mean, you're dealing with constantly dealing with diplomatic issues.
Easy,
and America is a tricky one for Nigerians because if lots of Nigerians visit, you can't imagine the hurdle of applying for a US visa and then having to do that every 3 months. Nigerians go to the US sometimes even a lot more than they do go to Europe. For some Nigerians, depending on the work you have to do, depending on family.
Well, Kachi, you also have to understand that we've been dealing with a similar issue with UAE.
Yes,
not just with their visas, but also with with flights between the two countries.
Yes.
And there are you just must have to put a stop to people disrespecting you.
It's slightly different, and I'll tell you why.
I guess so. I mean, it's because it's the United States.
Exactly. You have a lot of Nigerian students in school at this time in the US. You have a lot of Nigerian families. In fact, it's become even a birth plan where most families actually intentionally have kids in the US, move to the US at some point in time, and decide that this is a settlement plan for them. So it's a tricky situation.
It's a question of what can you take, in the name of disrespect.
Well, Steve, a lot of Nigerians are just, for lack of a better word, they'll just say, I beg.
Okay.
That's just it.
I beg.
I beg, God, I beg. Okay, let's move right on. A former secretary to the General of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, on Wednesday claimed that President Bola Tinubu did not single-handedly make his predecessor in office, that is Muhammadu Buhari, president, in 2015. Now, speaking at the unveiling of the book, according to the president, Lessons from a Presidential Spokesperson's Experience, written by ex-President Buhari's spokesman, Garba Shehu, the former SGF said Buhari already had 12 million existing votes and that the fusion of a number of political parties at the time merely contributed 3 million votes to push him across the line of victory. Now, as we approach the year 2027 and the presidential elections, I imagine we will see more conversations like this as they border around President Tinubu's reputation as a kingmaker and also his dominance as well within the different zones within Nigeria. But of course, we've seen this statement come under a lot of checkmating, with some agreeing that, okay, yes, President Tinubu actively did put this man in power, and others saying, no, that was not the case. In fact, he had dominance in the north already. The southwest, yes, but we saw him not get as many votes within the southeast and south-south zones. So I think it still remains to be questioned. These are books that I think a lot of people need to read to really contextualize what the issues are within our political space. But it still remains to be seen what exactly the true facts are. Perhaps you can shed more light on that.
Yes, I mean, I would like to. We're in a political season. It's getting hotter, and we're getting closer to, to the electioneering period. And I really do not understand the sense of,
Bringing this up.
revisionist attitude of the former secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. If the key word is single-handedly, okay, maybe that can be put in context and we can show understanding to it. I do not think that anyone, even the president himself, will claim that he single-handedly installed Buhari as the president. But of course, to now, to now reduce the import and the impact of what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu did for President Buhari in the 2015 elections, will be disingenuous. And that shouldn't come from a Boss Mustafa.
Yeah.
I get the point that, there are issues, seemingly, between the CPC faction of the APC and the ACN faction of the APC. But don't forget, Kachi, that those two parties were very instrumental to what we know today as APC.
Yes.
But of course, we must also acknowledge that AMPP also came on board. A few other smaller political parties, with the little that they had, also came on board. And more, also very importantly, the new PDP, with 5 governors, sitting governors, leaving the ruling party and moving into the APC, and then 2 other governors sitting down there but working for the APC. All those contributed, to making Buhari the president. When they say that he had 12 million votes, sometimes we exaggerate, and I do not want to oversimplify. In the 2007 elections against Yaradua, another northerner from Katsina, Buhari didn't have the 12 million votes. He had only 6 million. Okay, people might argue that maybe it was the abracadabra or the shenanigan of Obasanjo, who conducted the election as president, insisting that Yaradua was succeeding. But then to have that, Buhari's vote, Pumel from 12 million at that time, from 2003 to 2007 to 6 million, and then jump up again in 2011. But even in all those years, he never won. He never won at all. Even when he had a Southeastern as his running mate and another Southwestern as his running mate, until 2015, when so many factors coalesced. But of course, one key important figure in that, coalition was Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not just because of the 3 million votes from the southwest of Nigeria, but also because ACN, as an integral part of that coalition, was a formidable party. But not only that, also, very importantly, because Asiwaju was instrumental to ensuring that Buhari got the ticket at the primary elections. Part of the deal of Tinubu that I was, making reference to with Trump is if that primary election in December of 2014 had not held in Lagos, of course engineered substantially by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Atiku could have easily won. Maybe Kwakwanso, maybe even the late publisher of Leadership, who all contested at the primary election of APC against Buhari. And Buhari, at primary elections of that nature, didn't have the wherewithal. And I'm saying this with much respect. All the other elections that he had, he practically owned the machinery. He practically owned the parties. And therefore, there wasn't any problem getting the ticket. But in 2014, in Lagos, it was left to who will stand with me and ensure that I defeat at the primary election of the party, Atiku, Kwakwanso, and a few other persons. Somebody ensured that was done. And let's be fair. Fair is fair. It was Tinubu. And then going into the election proper, you could have your 12 million vote, but 12 million votes won't make you president. You needed additional 3 million, which somebody guaranteed. And again, as I said, in addition to the fact that there was an overwhelming need to sell somebody. Okay, was it left to just Tinubu and a few others saying Buhari should be the president, given what Asiwaju said in Ogun State, when he led to the Emilokon thing, how he ensured that Buhari won? No, because Buhari was also the only candidate at that time that could have defeated President Jonathan as a sitting governor. And so the two worked hand in hand. A man that we could sell, and it was the Asiwaju machinery that sold Buhari, so that Western voters from Southwest will not see him as just a northerner, and a religious bigot who didn't like Southerners. So the whole narrative was changed by people who understood how media worked. And that happened from Lagos, essentially. And Buhari became the darling. His wife was, rerouted into the campaign. His children, to an extent, that was a strategy that Buhari was not used to. And so he won the election, including, don't forget, the barrage of international support to say that if you are going to need Nigeria to change, you needed an incorruptible man, which it was only Buhari that fit the bill as at that time. But then in curating the message that will sell, somebody was behind it. And that was Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So if you say single-handedly, okay, maybe we could put it to debate and say that no single person could have made anybody a president. If Asiwaju was not important, how come the vice president was ceded to him? And he had to unpick who was going to be the running mate to Buhari. And they said, give me 3 names. The 3 names that he put there, Yemi Osinbajo, 1, 2, 3, because he didn't want any other person to emerge but the person that he was going to pick. If he wasn't that important, why was it ceded to him?
Okay, but
I hope you get the point that I'm trying to make.
I do
that
hear
Boss
you.
Mustafa, when he's saying, no single, and no one person single-handedly, that goes without saying. But then don't discountenance the contribution of an individual who put in everything into the game to ensure that Buhari became the president. That's my opinion, and this is not just massaging anybody's ego. This is just saying the fact, as a journalist that I was, and somebody who was very much interested in what was going on in 2014, 2015. This is my understanding of what happened.
Looking at the 2019 numbers, because I actually did take a look at this to really understand, what exactly happened. I noticed that 2019, specifically speaking about 2019, because 2019 was with Atiku, he's returning, right? Yeah. And we see that he had a lot of votes in the north, right? And then we see the southwest, if we're basing Tinubu's influence with the southwest region, he did split that with Atiku. Yes. And the margin wasn't the margin wasn't so far apart. So is there a possibility that what Boss Mustafa is trying to say is maybe he did contribute, but that doesn't change the overall power that President Muhammadu Buhari, former President Muhammadu Buhari had with the people. With the people, the fact that people actually did want this man. With the people essentially, not just in the north. Not just in the north, because like I said,
that's where his 12 million votes came
That's
from.
what I'm saying. So essentially in the north, but he also got some votes in the south as well. In the south, like you rightly said, the 12 million votes could not get him the presidency. But when you look at the southwest, the fact that he still split that with Atiku significantly, obviously Atiku didn't have...
Atiku split the vote with him.
Atiku split the vote with him, but by a little margin.
Atiku had left APC by that time.
Yeah.
The bone of contention is 2015 when he emerged.
Yeah.
2019 was for him to return.
For him to return, exactly.
So that was not as difficult as 2015. 2015 was the thing.
But even in 2015, he still got very minimal votes. That's former President Buhari. Compared to minimal in the southwest. So what I'm saying is, if we're basing this conversation on Tinubu's influence on his election, in the south, in the northwest, northeast, north central, he got, give or take, if I'm approximating this, close to 7, 8, 9, 10, about the same amount, 12 million votes, right? But when you bring it down to the southwest, he got less than 1 million. So how do you then juxtapose Tinubu's influence in his votes if his majority came from the north and just very minimal?
His majority votes had always come from the north.
So the Tinubu influence...
They were not enough. And it's not the total number of votes alone that you count in making somebody a president. You will have to win a certain number of states.
As, of course,
and
very
score
important.
25% in other states.
He got 21 out of 36?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So those factors put together.